Welcome one, and I guess welcome all to the greatest show of them all. It is the NFC Mixtape, volume, I think, 155. You can listen to us on any one of SB Nation's NFC East blog podcast networks, or you can watch us if you want a two-dimensional version of our faces on the Bleeding Green Nation YouTube channel or the Blogging the Boys YouTube channel. My name is Ochoa from BTB. His name, fresh off of chewing something, it seems, is Brandon Lee Gowton from BGN. BLG, what are you eating?
It's a cough drop because, as you can hear, potentially my voice is a little on the mend. Recovering from a weekend bachelor party in Tampa. Yeah, that's right. Shout out to my friend Zach, who's going to be getting married. It was a great time. A little chaotic getting back, RJ. Remember last week I started off the episode, and shout out to all the people who reached out, by the way, about the rats eating my cars and stuff. Got some good feedback. Going to try some of those things to hopefully prevent that from happening. Shout out to the mechanics who fixed it within like a day or two. They actually got it back to me really quick. So things are pointing up, I think, in the most part in my life, thankfully. Again, a little bit of a setback getting delayed in Tampa, having my flight canceled on Sunday night. Didn't get back till Monday night. I'm in the airport writing about all the news. Chaotic, but I made it back in time for the mixtape, which is the most important thing. That's what everyone truly cares about.
Wow, must be nice to have a lot of news to write about. I don't know what that's like. So for full context,
in fitting fashion, we're going to talk about that first.
Yeah, full context, full clarity, as we always offer, but certainly more important this time of year as we are in the middle of the free agency frenzy. I don't know if that's trademarked by anybody. It's actually technically not free agency. It's technically only the legal tampering period. Technically.
Well, technically, it's not even legal tampering. It's the negotiating window. Is the official NFL parlance.
Well, it is Tuesday, March the 12th, and is now 1:02 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So if something happens after that,
I'm sure 50 things are going to happen.
Well, if something happens after this, obviously, if it's Eagles related, BLG will take care of something at BGN. If it's Cowboys related, I'll take care of something at BTB. So use your common sense. If it was big enough, you know that we will obviously have you covered as we always do, and also make sure to visit Big Blue View for New York Giants coverage and Hawkshaven for Washington Commanders. BLG, it's time to talk about what these teams have done or have agreed to do, I suppose, with regards to free agency. You mentioned what we were going to start with. We do go in divisional standing. The Dallas Cowboys, unfortunately for this conversation, won the NFC East last year, which means we have to discuss them first. The YouTube audience, we've offered you a very special thing again.
Just a blank space.
We're looking.
That's not true, though. I heard the Cowboys re-signed their long snapper.
That's true. So I haven't refreshed this in a while. I guess let me try that. This is NFL.com. There it is.
Popped up.
That was great for the YouTube audience once again. Sorry to the podcast audience, but we are trying to do what we can, and so the YouTube audience gets to see this. Again, thank you to NFL.com for putting together this wonderful tracker. We are, of course, tracking stuff at BTB, as I know you are at BGN, and once again, our friends at Big Blue View and Hawkshaven are as well. The Cowboys were the only team, Brandon, that did nothing. I don't know if you knew this or not. On Monday during day one of activity, like literally nothing. Like not a re-signing, there was not even I wrote a tab or a section in our tracker for rumors. You know what I mean?
I was going to say, not even rumors, really, other than the Zach Moss thing.
There was not, well, that I did add that late at the very end of the day. That was, about 10 p.m. Central. But there was nothing that they weren't even connected to any of these big name running backs or anything like that. There was nothing that went their way. They were just completely and totally a wallflower throughout all the free agency. Now, on Tuesday morning, they did bring back Trent Sieg, who is a friend of, I don't know if you know this or not, Baltimore Beatdowns, Kyle Barber here at SB Nation. But that's neither here nor there. He's back on a 1-year deal. So good for Trent. He had a lot of fun with the way people were really upset about, all this happening on social media. They have done nothing. They have lost Tony Pollard to the Tennessee Titans. He goes home. I don't know if you remember that he played at Memphis in college. Mm-hmm. So good for Tony. And the other two players they lost so far, Dorrance Armstrong and Tyler Biadasz, are part of the NFC East incestual pool as they are headed to Dan Quinn's Washington Commanders.
This was expected, right? With the lack of Dak Prescott contract extension, negotiation, whatever, clearing up cap space. And also just because this is how the Cowboys kind of operate in free agency in general, or at least have for a bit now. And also, I will say, in defense of the Cowboys, gasp, it is early. like we haven't hit the Wednesday actual start of free agency yet. I know it's not a fun feeling when you're not involved at all in any capacity, but just thinking about last year, like first for the Eagles, some of their moves didn't come until like that Wednesday or later in the week. So still plenty of time for things to happen here. We are not like done with the first wave, I would say, yet by any means. So I would say, hold off a little bit. That being said, obviously some notable additions, but do you really? I know you wanted Pollard back. I know you were setting up the Cowboys re-signing Pollard by pointing out how he had the best BFF grade since he
I
felt
thought
like
I thought he was a
healthy.
great buy low candidate. I think it was a
Yeah,
great buy low move for the Titans, to be clear. I mean, it just
I
so
don't think it's
happened that
buying
he
low.
played for the Cowboys. Well, yeah, not now. I mean, it was $8 million a year, but but whatever. I mean, low. Well, we'll get to what it's low relative to. Sorry, I interrupted you.
Well, I was just gonna say, like, do you wish the Cowboys kept any of these players, especially at the prices that they were at, or are you okay with them moving on and playing the comp pick game and also playing the like the wait out the market game, trying to get people on under market deals?
So, do want to plug over the cap. They are projecting 2025 compensatory picks already, which is really helpful and useful as it relates to all of this. The Cowboys at the moment are projected to receive 2 fifth-round compensatory picks next year and a 6th round. By the way, comp picks for this year were announced since we last recorded. But I hear what you're saying in that there's not a real need to panic or whatever. Although I know that you certainly have a criticism for this kind of MO as well. I would, and I think I speak for most Cowboys fans here, I would feel way less critical of it if this was a deviation, right? If they had acted differently in the recent past, they say, you know what, we want to try things a little bit differently. That wasn't working for us, so we're going to try to be a bit more conservative. We've been burned with some high price free agent deals. We're going to wait till the value is a little bit better. We're going to wait till the first initial, maybe even second initial waves are over. We'll feel more comfortable with those deals. That way, we find some that aren't necessarily going to impact our comp formula for next year. And you mentioned the Dak deal, and I know you know this, but because this is getting exhausting among fellow Cowboys fans, the Dak deal or the pending Dak extension or the pending CD extension, those are not holding the Cowboys back. Like the Cowboys are trying to convince fans everywhere that they are stuck, that they are trapped, that they cannot do anything, that they are being held hostage. They could totally fix this if they really wanted to. Even if they didn't want to extend Dak, they could restructure Dak. And they could even agree on these deals and then figure out they could restructure Trayvon Diggs. They could restructure Terrence Steele. It doesn't even have to be one of those. They could create the salary cap space to do any one of these things. And this is something that we talked about on the BTB roundtable on Tuesday night. So in the future for me as we tape this. So I think that I'm not mad that any of these players got away because I think that all of them were probably a little bit overpaid, and so I can square that in my mind. But what I can't square is doing nothing. And what I can't square is doing nothing for the 11th, 12th year in a row at this point. You cannot tell me, as homer of a Cowboys fan as you might be, that you legitimately believe that 31 of 32 teams are getting this wrong. All right. Now, I recognize some teams are more aggressive and more in on free agency than others are right now, but that the Dallas Cowboys sat back and I would offer arrogantly just decided to do things their own way really kind of spells doom. And they're pigeonholing themselves relative to the draft, which they don't have a ton of capital in. They don't have that 4th round draft pick because they traded it for Trey Lance last year. So they have all of these holes. And that's, at the moment, Tyron Smith hasn't officially found a new home. Maybe there's a miracle there. But even if he does come back, they still have way more than 3 holes, which is what obviously your top 100 picks would allow you to fix if you even did hit on all 3 of them. And last year, their draft class was horrible. So I think this is not a group that deserves the benefit of the doubt, which I think is a requirement to kind of walk the line of positivity that you offered.
I don't know if it's positivity. It's more of just like there's more time. Like just, it's not over yet. Plenty of offseason left to go. I say just as the new league year has not even begun. Now, inarguably, the Cowboys have gotten worse. That's what is not the fun part for you right now. Like there's no way of spinning that. Maybe it's not a matter of like, well, they can't recover from this now. And it's not like, oh, there's nothing else they can do to rectify getting worse and potentially getting better. But right now, where they currently sit as we're recording this, they're a worse team. So that is not fun for you.
They were the last team in the NFL last year to sign an external free agent. I don't think that everyone has signed an external free agent as of yet, so they're not technically last at this moment, but they're certainly on track to be. And again, if they had offered a bird in hand I think if they had re-signed Tyron, you know what I mean? Like, at least you would be able to square that in your mind. Say, like, at least you did something. Right now, to your point, they're a worse team. I would ask you, as somebody who monitors this team very closely, obviously, what have they done? Like, if somebody were to be like, hey, BLG, like, what name, obviously, they brought back Trent Sieg. But, like, outside of that, what have they, what paperwork have they processed? What emails have they sent? Like, I know that's a really weird way to put this in a silly way, but what work have they actually done since they got dragged in the playoff loss to Green Bay?
Well, they angered Dak Prescott's brother on Twitter enough for Tad to say that the Eagles have the best front office in the NFL. So they did accomplish that. They did also make Micah Parsons, who very much wants to be an Eagle, very mad once again by doing something, but or not really doing something, but by reacting to something. I mean, nothing really, right? They brought Mike McCarthy back. Oh, they got Mike Zimmer. Okay.
Okay,
You
they
think that's
brought
an
in
upgrade?
a family friend to to on a 1-year deal to join their 1-year staffer, and head coach. And right now, their 1-year quarterback, and as of right now, at least their 1-year wide receiver, CeeDee Lamb, Dak Prescott, Mike McCarthy, Mike Zimmer. They are all currently at this moment in time on the final years of their respective contracts with the team. Like, they haven't even taken, and that's why, like, miss me with all this. Like, even if you are foolish enough to buy that, like, they're trapped or whatever, they have had the entire offseason to this point to generate this cap space if they wanted to be active, but they have no interest in it. And where the frustration lies is, I obviously, as you monitor the Cowboys very closely, and we're going to get to them shortly, monitor the Eagles very closely. And it is so frustrating to watch Howie Roseman, because I know you've had your issues with him. This is my assessment of Howie. To me, he seems like somebody who is completely, and I say this with nothing but respect, obsessed with his job, like completely obsessed with building the best possible football team. Why? Because it's his job. And if he doesn't do it properly, there's a level of accountability, right? Like, he's been punished in the past, and he's almost had it completely he did have it completely taken away from him, and he fought to get it back. And he's proven himself to obviously be one of the best evaluators of talent and acquirers of talent in the NFL. And I guess this kind of serves as this, like, transitional part of the discussion, because that's not the Joneses. Like, they don't have a level of accountability to anyone. If they miss on this, if they're not active in free agency, like, what is the price? What is the repercussion? Oh, they're really bad this year, and they don't bring Mike McCarthy back. They don't bring Mike Zimmer back. Like, maybe Dak walks, maybe CD, ultimately plays hardball with them. I don't know. But either way, like, there's no accountability. They can be as bad as they want to at this, and nothing happens. And the worst part about it is people like me. I mean, obviously this is my job, but, like, we don't go anywhere. Like, this is a team that we love. Like, so, like, somebody was asking me on Twitter on Monday during the chaos of it all, like, man, why do they treat us like this? And I answered, I was like, because we will show up anyway. Like, and that is, they are the most, and I know this annoys you, the most popular, most watched, most cared about, most discussed, most polarizing, most whatever you want team in the world. And none of that changes. In fact, this whole saga or whatever only helps them, because it creates controversy. All of the national headlines aren't about Christian Wilkins going to Miami or Saquon or whatever. It's, why did the Dallas Cowboys do nothing? They are the conversation, and they have achieved that goal, which is seemingly what matters the most to them.
Just a quick point on Howie, not trying to transition to the Eagles just yet, but you brought that up. I guess in defense of him, yeah, one of my criticisms of him in the past, it comes from a place of, I guess, a good place to criticize him, if I'm phrasing this right, in that I think where he's had faults is that he's been overthinking things at times.
He's doing his job too hard.
Right, which is, I guess, a good problem to have, kind of thing. Ultimately, obviously, you don't want to see that happen. You'd like to scale that back. But does it beat the alternative of sitting on your hands? Yes, I think it does, because maybe Howie's doing too much sometimes, but at least he's in those conversations, and you can have that feeling that he is, like you're saying, like, he's trying. At the very least, he's trying. Where right now with the Cowboys, it's hard to reconcile. Like, they're not even trying, or at least that's the feel. Now, I do want to, because we've talked a lot about what they haven't done, and that's boring. Why don't you give me some potential ideas now for what they could or should do at this point? And I think especially at running back, because we totally misread this. I think everyone misread this, to be fair. It's not just us.
Right.
But, like, we thought, it seemed like, especially coming off last off season, where there was, like, a crisis with the running backs and no one got paid. It seemed like that was set up to happen again, because there were so many running backs on the market that it seemed like the smart move would be just to not buy, just wait for everyone's prices to drop, and then you can go after them all. So yeah, what do you think the Cowboys do, I guess, next / first? And I would like you to touch on running back specifically.
I think that what we as a football society maybe didn't take properly into consideration or weigh enough was how shallow the position is in the draft class. And so I think you're seeing a lot of teams position themselves to where they don't need a running back.
I would say in the cap jump too.
Right. I mean, the comp I've been using a lot, like on the radio and podcasts, is, do you remember when Mike Conley got all that money in NBA free agency? And it was like,
yes, yeah,
it was like, how did this happen? And it was like, oh, it was because of the jump and everything. So like,
that was that whole year, that whole offseason. Like
everybody
Turner,
got like, because the NBA teams like had to spend, and so like it benefited anybody who was in free agency at that moment. So running backs kind of, again, it's not apples to apples, but there was a similar sort of thing, like the cap jump, like the teams were able to, like, quote unquote, overpay a little bit because of that. And then again, the shallowness of the pool in the draft class only aided in that capacity. So good for them. I mean, I really am happy for every player that got the deal that hopefully they wanted. But so we mentioned at the very beginning, it was reported late on Monday night that the Cincinnati Bengals were signing Zach Moss and we're going to be releasing Joe Mixon. That did not happen, actually. It's always weird how they're like, oh, just kidding. They wound up trading him, whatever. So whatever. But either way, Joe Mixon was traded to the Houston Texans, like, I don't know, like 12 hours later. But again, that's a different podcast.
It is funny. Well, it's because they don't file the paperwork,
right?
They leak it with the intent that someone might call last minute and hope to like offer something so that they don't, it doesn't get to the point where it's on the market.
So as it relates to the Cowboys and Zach Moss, Michael Gowton of the Dallas Morning News tweeted out that the Cowboys were in on Zach Moss. A person familiar with the discussion said, ultimately, the price extended past their comfort point. Do you know off the top of your head what Zach Moss got from the Bengals?
It was like 2 for $8 or something.
2-year, $8 million contract. So if that exceeded their comfort point, I have no idea what I mean, I say this like somewhat tongue in cheek, like the way we did last year. I honestly kind of think they're waiting for a moment where Zeke is one of the better free agents available. And to where they, tell me that like that is impossible.
I didn't even consider it. Wait, Zeke's a free agent?
Yeah, like tell me that that's impossible.
Is he? I didn't know that.
Yeah, and I don't think he would factor into the comp formula. So like that's a double win for them, because the Patriots didn't release him. So I mean, I think they're waiting to where it makes overwhelming sense. Again, do you just like, and it'll be Zeke and Deuce Vaughn, and then they'll draft a guy or whatever. Like, tell me that is impossible.
Sad. That's so sad. If that's
it's
true.
Sad how, even though it's kind of a joke of a prediction, that there is like a legitimate way that is possible. You know what I mean? It's sad that you can't be all, oh, dude, RJ, you're just being ridiculous. That's impossible. So Zeke, I mean, I don't know.
Well, let's like talk like the top running backs on the market at this point. I mean, Derrick Henry just signed with the Ravens as we basically started recording.
Clyde Edwards-Helaire, AJ Dillon. I mean, at this point, it's
J.K. Dobbins. You could take a chance on him. Damian Harris is out there.
J.K. fits the mold of them feeling like they really got one, because they'll feel like, and they'll sell it as
it's the Rashad Penny signing for the Eagles last year.
Yeah, he's just dealt with a lot of injuries, and was he taken in the first round? I can't recall now.
I think it was second, but yeah, but if you got him on a minimum deal, sure, why not? But it's just tough.
But it didn't have to be this way, and I don't want to keep saying the same thing over and over again. But it's going to be a name like that, and then they're going to spend a day 2 pick, I would imagine, on the position, and they have Deuce Vaughn in the fold, and maybe they bring back Rico Dowdle. I mean, who knows? But that will be it. I think the only things we're kind of waiting on now. I know you asked about running back, but I want to get to the other teams that have actually done something. We're waiting on.
You still need to give me a move the Cowboys you want them to make at all. Just give me a move. Who do you want? Who's out there that you like?
That's what I was going to say. Like, bring Tyron back. Because at this point, if you don't do that, like, what have you really accomplished? And if you want to bring in Devin White or whatever, if you want to bring in Bobby Wagner, like, it will be very hard for me to get pumped about any of these things. But you have to take care of these needs, certainly ahead of the draft. So, but my number one goal at this point, given the lack of talent available, would be to bring back Tyron. So that's my number one thing.
Okay. You ready to talk about the Eagles?
I am. Let me put them on the screen, though. I lost my tab.
The Eagles, who really almost just did justify an NFC East mixtape emergency episode. I was not able to record. Right. And also, we were going to do the mixtape today anyway. So it's, we waited it out. But if this deal happened on Thursday, then we would be doing another episode, obviously. But they've been very busy, and honestly, everything they've done since we recorded.
Rip through the list for the audio.
Well, everything's not even there in terms of like since we recorded. Avonte Maddox is gone. They cut him. Fletcher Cox retired. Like that's not in here. That's a big deal. Like that's just one of the many things that's been going on with the Eagles since then. I'm sure I'm forgetting something else, but let's really talk about the biggest thing that
you kind of hate, from what I've gathered.
I don't hate it in terms of like F- grade, but I don't love it. I mean, let's be real. And you back me up on this because people want to accuse me of being negative.
Okay, quickly for the podcast audience, the things on the screen, because I don't want to isolate them. Saquon Barkley, Alberto, Landon Dickerson got the extension. BLG is back. Bryce
That's
Huff,
right.
the other big thing. I'm sure you're excited about that. And Julian Okwara. There was
that
also
happened like a while ago.
I know, but who was the offensive lineman that they brought in Tuesday morning?
Matt Hennessy. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so Saquon.
Anyway, let's start with Saquon though, because I mean, back me up on this. How many times? I mean, we've both been on the same page about this. I've consistently felt like Saquon is overrated for like years now. Haven't I felt that way? So why am I just changing my mind all of a sudden?
Because he's wearing an Eagles jersey. That's
right.
Why.
Well, I think that there's
also. Did you know he went to Penn State? We are.
But there's so much of I feel like that going on, which I understand is part of the fun of it. I'm not trying to yuck people's yum if they want to enjoy it, but I just do think when we're talking about it in a nerdy, analytical, objective way, which is what we do here, not just the Bleacher Report graphic.
Wow.
Oh my gosh, who's stopping this lineup?
By the way, they've changed. They're on to us and how we're on to them. It's a little bit different with how they're presenting things now. So, hey.
I sent you that over the weekend when the rumors of Eagles signing Saquon were happening because the graphic like that popped up. And it's just funny to me because it's like, this is almost the same offense as last year, which did get stopped. And it's like, how could someone possibly stop this offense? Anyway, and I know they have a new offensive coordinator and everything, but still, it's just a little funny to me. The thing with Saquon is that, I don't think it's a disaster move because really it's like a 2-year contract. But I also just think that the idea of Saquon has been so much better, or is so much better the way people talk about him than the reality of him for a while now. His first 2 years, he was incredible. He was amazing. He was elite. He was the prospect that everyone thought he was going to be when he was also awesome at Penn State. Since then, since he's had these injuries, past couple years, few years now, he just hasn't been this. He has not been that special player. And look, I know the Giants' offensive line is bad, and he hasn't been in a situation with not even just the offensive line, but the quarterback, with the skill players, like to have all that talent around him. I don't doubt that he can be better in Philly than he was in New York. That's not a doubt of mine. I just think you gave him money for kind of like a special player. And I think, I could be wrong, I think Howie Roseman would admit this isn't a proven kind of thing in terms of like, it's not a one-to-one. I feel extremely confident this is going to be happen. Set it and forget it. I think it's a risk. I think he knows it's a risk. I think he's taking an upside on offense. And I like that in theory, that you're trying to make the offense as good as you possibly can. I'm okay with that level of thinking and risk. But I just think the evaluation of the player, and I don't know how reliable this metric is, but I think it's just interesting to point out. I tweeted this at Brandon Gowton.
Right.
So, because everyone wants to talk about, well, the offensive line for the Giants stunk. And it did. We all know that. But there's a metric that Pro Football Focus has called elusive rating. And to be fair, I don't know exactly how they calculate this, but it aims to measure the success and impact of a runner with the ball independently of the blocking. And Saquon was really good his first 2 years. He ranked 7th in 2018 as a rookie. 2019, he was 12th. Every year since then, from 2020 to 2023, I'm just going to rattle them off: 51st, 48th, 49th, 51st. Like, I just don't see how you're going from that to suddenly being like the best in the league, which is what I think he needs to be. I think the Eagles are hoping he can kind of be Christian McCaffrey for them. And if that works out, that's great. But that's also like a really high bar to reach. And I also think that's like you're betting on the exception. I don't really always love to do that. I mean, I guess you like it from the standpoint of, again, willing to take risks and everything. But in terms of likelihood of it working out, I just don't feel amazing about that. So I don't hate the move. It's fun. It's fun to see Saquon Barkley be excited about playing in Philly and combating Tiki Barber on Twitter and everything. Like, it's fun, but it just doesn't really seem in character for this organization in terms of what they've been able to accomplish by investing less and getting more at running back. And I'm not as thrilled about it as everyone else.
It does feel a teeny bit like DeMarco Murray, a teeny bit, right? Like a little.
Well, I have a number for you. I have some numbers for you on that, at least one, or maybe multiple. But because I looked that up, DeMarco Murray touches before signing with the Eagles, he had 1,105. Like in his career,
that was only in 4 years, though.
Yes. Now, but still, like how does total touches not matter?
I'm just saying, the context is important. But go ahead.
Saquon has 1,480. So basically, Saquon has like about almost like 300 more touches than DeMarco did. Now, in fairness, DeMarco was also coming off of that season, and he had like 444 touches, something like insane. And by contrast, Saquon had about like 200 fewer last year. So I do think there's a difference between that going from that year to that year. But still, you look at the wear and tear on the body. And also, maybe Saquon is more built to handle that than your typical running back because he is such an athletic specimen and freak. But I interrupted you. Point being that I don't think you're saying that and it comes out of nowhere.
So something I like to do a lot, and I've told you this before, is like look at time in a weird way. So Saquon was a 2018 draft pick, right? So it's been 6 years since that had happened, right? Or since the draft happened. At the time that Saquon was drafted, it had, as an example, it had been 6 years since Trent Richardson was drafted. Like, think about that. Like, think about like if I'd asked you the night that the Giants drafted Saquon, like how long ago the Browns drafted Trent Richardson, you'd be like, oh, that was like forever ago. You know what I mean? Like, so it's
Trent Richardson was playing like football not even that long ago.
He was playing professional football in Mexico. Last I saw,
like a year or two ago.
Yeah,
like, that's crazy to me.
But you know, like that's again, he's been in the NFL a lot longer than the average person would think. And so I agree with you that if any, I guess I agree with your Christian McCaffrey thing, and I would say if anyone has a chance at being a new team's Christian McCaffrey, it's probably Saquon. And I agree that it is definitely swing for upside. In that sense, it's an overpay. I thought this was hilarious the way it was tweeted out by Adam Schefter, like the maximum potential average yearly salary he could earn maybe is whatever, and it would be the second highest for a running back in NFL history. And I came to the realization that this has nothing to do with who Saquon has ever chosen to be, but his mystique is a little bit like Russ. A little bit like you know what I mean? Like he's so corporate, but not because like Russell makes himself corporate, but like Saquon is like a corporation in terms of his legend, and especially obviously as it relates to the Philadelphia area and the surrounding area. And so
his first name is like a brand, basically.
Exactly. So that's what I'm saying. Like, and he had to like say quads thing, and then he played for New York, and it was all, you know what I mean? It's like
it's his Twitter handle, right? Isn't his Twitter handle just at Saquon?
I don't know. I said say quads when he was coming out because his quads were so.
No, I know, but I'm just saying going back to the first name thing.
Yeah, well, it's kind of like Dak. Like his Twitter handle is Dak. You know what I'm saying? So like, I understand the.
It is, yeah.
I understand the like new orbit of attention around this because it is this big thing. But I. Like in a vacuum, I would have rather had, say, Aaron Jones on the 1 year, $7 million deal that Minnesota got. But I also understand taking the swing, and I would use your own words against yourself and say, like, what's the worst that could happen? Like, like it doesn't work out and you don't win the Super Bowl again. You know what I mean? Like, I respect saying this is something we think could be great. It's a little bit different from what we've done. It runs a little bit counter to our overall team building philosophies, but we have to change. We have to adapt. We have to evolve. And there were a lot of other running backs that got paid. Granted, not as much as Saquon. So I don't have a huge issue with it. And maybe some of this is I don't have the spirit to hate on it because the Cowboys have broken me so much. But I mean, I think it's fine, but it is definitely an overpay. And that's okay. It's free agency. That's the way this whole thing works.
I don't know if it's confirmation bias, but I think there is something to, like, you know, let's say, like, pick a team that's like you would think would be dumb, or is kind of like, what if the Titans did this, people or whoever, it'd be like, oh, that's kind of dumb. Whereas the Eagles do it, they get like a little bit more benefit of the doubt, maybe, but
they get a lot more benefit of the doubt. What are you talking about? It's okay. We can all admit we're all adults here.
Which I think is fair to some level, like more than none at all.
Yeah, Howie has earned it again.
More than none, but yeah, not to the point where you can't question it at all. Yeah, so I actually think I don't always agree. I think I often disagree with Bill Barnwell, but he actually had a really good take on this at signing at all. He actually said it like doesn't. He thinks it doesn't move. He thinks the most likely outcome is that it doesn't move the needle for the team. And I also think that is true as the most likely outcome. That doesn't mean that's like the guaranteed outcome. Again, I do see the ceiling on the move, and I respect the reaching for that. But it just seems more theoretical than actual to me. And I think that's a lot of what Saquon is at this point. I think I don't like to be like the gatekeep fandom guy, but I feel like there's a kind of a big separation between like more like the casual fandom in terms of like people who really love like are paying attention to football like through Madden and fantasy football. And I feel like Saquon's equity has kind of risen in those categories so high, and draft pedigree. That's a big pet peeve of mine in general.
And fantasy
he was drafted
football
at 2, so he's amazing. That's not necessarily how it works.
And fantasy football, like because he's like
fantasy, yeah.
Well, I was definitely listening.
Oh, no, well, anyway, yeah, but that's true. Exactly. But there's so many players, or not so many, but there are players like that who it's like, well, they're good in fantasy, so they must be good in reality. It's not true. Or they're good in Madden, they have a high Madden rating. or they've made the Pro Bowl, whatever Saquon's made the Pro Bowl. Like part of that's just name recognition,
or
at some level.
or people who watch college football remember,
Yep.
you know what I mean? Like remember him, and certainly again relative to Pennsylvania, fans and Penn State fans, whatever.
Anchoring bias, I think that's called. Like I think that's
Yeah.
yeah. So I think there's a lot of that goes on with him. And again, not to say he's a trash player or anything, but the point is, as we say with the overrated episode we do every year, it's not that I think the player sucks. It's that I think they're not as good as they are purported to be, and that's my issue with Saquon. So
I think Bill graded the move a C-. Am I correct in remembering that?
Who's Bill?
Bill
Barnwell.
Yeah.
No, he put incomplete for like the big section that the Eagles had.
Then there was another ESPN Plus article where they graded it, and I think they graded the move a C. So I guess that wasn't Bill. But I guess the best way to kind of put all this in a package is the likelihood, not the statement, but the likelihood for a positive return on investment is low, and that's just the way it goes. But the risk is potentially worth it, at least in the eyes of Howie Roseman. I think everything else was kind of ho hum, but the other thing that stood out, that's what I was going to say.
Yeah,
that was the big deal. He's been a guy that's really stood out in a lot of advanced metrics. And so I don't know. Obviously, you would know what's going to happen with Hassan Reddick. But I was more annoyed by this than I was the Saquon thing.
Oh, in terms of like the Cowboys perspective.
Right.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's also a bit of a projection. It's a swing. It's not like when the Eagles signed Hassan Reddick, I know there was some projection there, but he also had like double-digit sack seasons to kind of coming off of where you've seen him do it. Bryce Huff has done that for 1 year, but before that, he wasn't doing much of anything. His snap counts are low. It doesn't mean it can't work out, that he can be, take on a bigger role and be impactful and be consistent. But the Eagles are taking a leap here, and they're doing it at a cost where Bryce Huff is like just outside of the top 15 edge rushers. And they're doing it in a way where it sounds like Josh Sweat could be on the way out. As we're recording this, Josh Sweat had commented on Instagram on Tuesday morning, quote, "I will miss you all," in Instagram comments in response to the Josh Sweat fan club Instagram page. So we'll see what happens there. There was reporting, that both Josh Sweat and Hassan Reddick could potentially be gone. I don't love that. I would like to get rid of Josh Sweat if you're going to trade one of the two, and I would like to keep Hassan Reddick if that is doable. So that's what I'm hoping the Eagles do. But as far as Huff goes, yeah, it's a risk, and I think there's upside there, and there's reason to believe he's an ascending player. But there's also concern that he's bad against the run, and the Jets didn't even like have him on the field as a full-time player in part because of that. And it's a little like funny that some of the internal criticism coming out about Hassan Reddick and Josh Sweat late last season was that they weren't like defending the run enough, and they were kind of freelancing a little bit too much. And then you sign a player, your first big signing is the guy who like isn't on the field for the run. So it's a little bit of a weird criticism for the team to kind of leak out there and then sign that player. So weird to me, but I'm more on board with this move because pass rush is, obviously a premium position, and it is in line with the Eagles have done in the past, and you're betting on a ascending player. And I guess maybe this is also a point in the Saquon favor. If you look at the history of Howie Roseman, now let me stop down on that real quick. Howie Roseman, I'm not saying Eagles. Howie Roseman free agent signings, they've been pretty good. It's hard to list the ones that are bad. Like people will be like, oh, what about people who aren't as closely paying attention? Bring up DeMarco Murray and everything. That's Chip. That was the Chip Kelly year. That was not the Howie Roseman year. So Byron Maxwell, same thing. And now obviously you can go back far enough to be like, well, Nnamdi. Well, that was also 13 years ago at this point. So that was like Howie's second year as GM. So since Howie has come back to power in 2016, he really hasn't had many free agent flops. So yeah.
Well, he's due. That's the one way you can look at it.
I mean, he's a lower level one.
No.
Sure. But when it comes to like the premium deals, those have all actually been pretty good.
If anyone has earned the benefit of the doubt, again, to take a chance on something like this, it's Howie Roseman. I stand by that. I did want to squeeze into more things here before we take a break and get to the New York and Washington side of things. So I tweeted, this is a Cowboys thing, and then I have a Saquon thing. I tweeted a little while ago before we started recording that we're reaching the point where the cope, this is my exact tweet, we're reaching the point where the cope will really start to sink in and people will start falling too in love with players on the roster at spots where the Cowboys should have upgraded and act like that was the best plan all along, right? Like that's a very common phenomenon. Like we'll reach training camp and they'll be like, oh, why this guy is awesome. And somebody responded to that, said, bring back Zeke. So again, like that is happening.
People were doing this with Quez Watkins at one point. I remember last offseason, it was like revenge season.
Exactly.
Like, he's going to be back.
And I wanted to bring this up on the Saquon thing. And again, really just on the running back thing and how it speaks to how it's important that we were right. I know that you agree with me. So this was a tweet from Lindsay Rhodes right after the deal kind of came together. She said, I'm seeing analysis from people I very much like and respect, indicating that this was Monday, moves showed the running back position is more valued than we've been saying. Respectfully, I don't see it that way. One, Gabe Davis got 3 for 39. Saquon got 3 for 37 and 3/4. And again, that's you could look at that in two different ways. But number two, running backs are signing early. That doesn't necessarily mean teams are prioritizing them. I think it's because the numbers are the numbers. The market is clear. Holding out for more won't necessarily lead to more, especially with competition this offseason for those jobs. So it's a different year, a different paradigm than it was last offseason when, say, Dalvin Cook was able to wait until training camp to sign with the Jets. I thought that was an interesting kind of spin on the whole situation.
It's definitely, I think that's like the story of free agency from a league-wide perspective, probably, right? Not just like drilling down on one team, but like looking at the bigger trends of the league itself. Yeah, it's definitely and again, just I think the most unexpected thing. I don't think anyone was talking about, oh yeah, everyone's going to get big money. No, and like DeAndre Swift, first deal of free agency. Like it's crazy how these running backs are getting paid. Wild.
Let's take a very quick break to hear a word from our sponsors. Brandon, while we were gone, you told me what your favorite hot drink is.
Hot drink. What's your favorite hot drink?
Tea. Like a good tea with some either agave or honey, anything like that. I mean, coffee's great, but there's something about a tea that really slaps.
I do like a tea. I will say, really love like this is a very specific thing.
I could see you being like a cider person. Like
I was literally just gonna say but like from a cauldron, like it's fall, you're outside, and they're just like
it's more about the vibe than the actual
well, it's
drink
just
itself.
like, and you're outside, and it's not like freezing out, but it's a little chilly, and you just have some of that cider to kind of like, and also if you make it boozy if you wanted to or not. I know you can do that with most drinks, but like I think it especially lends well to making it a little bit boozy, and heating you up, feeling good.
The New York Football Giants are kind of back. So
they lost Saquon, baby. They're done.
Saquon is gone. The YouTube audience can see everything they've done. They did sign Devin Singletary, so he's in the fold. Jermaine Illuminor is also in tow, so they bolster their offensive line along with John Runyon. Big day for guards, although that was predictable, unlike the running back market. But the big move for them, Brandon, was the acquisition of Brian Burns. It's really difficult to hate on this unless you're a Carolina Panthers fan or you're talking about it from their perspective. So the trade was that the Giants gave up, rather, in the trade. What they gave up, a second and fifth round pick in the upcoming 2024 NFL draft. And they gave him a new 5-year deal worth up to $150 million, as you can see on screen, with $76 million fully guaranteed. The saga that Burns went through with the Carolina Panthers was well documented, and Carolina very infamously turned down multiple first-round draft picks from the Los Angeles Rams now 2 years ago, prior to the trade deadline. This worked out really well, I think, for the Giants. And you pair him, obviously, as a bookend pass rusher with Kayvon Thibodeau. Again, I hesitate to say they're back, but like they're turning a little bit of a corner. Like, they had the really kind of sputtery start to this past season, but the waters have stabilized. And as soon as they figure out the quarterback situation, there's a lot to really like.
I think it's good that they didn't sign Saquon for the position they're in. So they didn't do that. And I think that's a good move for them. I want to touch really quickly on the John Runyon thing, just because it's funny that you had John Runyon versus Michael Strahan as like this epic, long-standing NFC East battle for so long. Probably one of the best. I don't know if we have like the conceptual ranking. I don't know if we have this conceptualized fully, but like if we're talking about like a specific matchup in the NFC East of all time, like that's one of the best ones in terms of length and also like two great players. And also like the respect they had for each other was kind of cool. Like they all it's kind of like you and me, frenemies and whatnot. Anyway. It is funny.
Who is who? Who's John Runyon and who's Michael Strahan?
I think I'm obviously John Runyon.
Why am I Michael Strahan?
I don't know. Because I don't know. Because you like the Giants. Anyway, so that's kind of funny. But yeah, getting on to Brian Burns. I think he's a little overrated, not because he's bad. I think he's a really great player. I think the way people talk about him is like a little much like he's never made an all-pro team. And I feel like the way people talk about him, it would be like he's made like all-pro every year or like 3 times. Anyway, I think it actually is obviously though a really good move for the Giants, in part because like they've lacked edge rush help since Michael Strahan. Like which Giants edge rusher? And I know Kayvon Thibodeau had a good year last year, but like when's the last time you really feared? I don't think anyone's fearing Kayvon Thibodeau.
I can answer that. just individually, because Tyron Smith hasn't had a lot of kryptonites in the past, but Olivier Vernon was one of them. Like
Okay,
that was one dude who kind of owned him. And
that's
so
true, but
that's my answer.
that was also a stretch of Giants football where like they just weren't super relevant
Well,
or
I mean, just
threatening.
again, the whole purpose of the NFC East mixtape is to go through like the annals of NFC East history.
No, that's a
And
good
so,
one.
yeah.
I think you're right, but I'm just saying, like, when's the last
What do
time
you
when
mean
the
you think I'm
Giants
right? I know I'm right. Like that is the answer. So I mean,
when the Giants were actually kind of like relevant, and also they had a scary edge. And even though you said that with him, like, don't you think Brian Burns is scarier
I
than Olivier Vernon?
I think he's scarier, especially because now they have two prominent edge rushers. Like,
And he's only
okay,
26. He's going to be in his age 26 season. So like he's going to be he could conceivably be here for like I don't know,
oh,
at least 8 seasons.
he'll be here for the life of the contract at the very least.
Sure.
And obviously pairing him with Kayvon is great. Like, do they have maybe the best pair of edge rushers in no, they don't. I mean,
Who?
I had to think the Giants, but every pair is kind of coming
In the
along.
division?
Well, so like now I don't know who you would qualify as the pair in Philadelphia if Hassan Reddick
Well,
is
yeah,
out.
it's in flux. I
Right.
think if you're saying, let's just say, because there's rumors that it might be Josh Sweat out. If you're saying Huff and Reddick, I think you could argue the upside of the pass rush specifically is better there.
I still think
Now,
Micah Parsons and DeMarcus Lawrence take the cake.
okay,
I know that you don't believe in DeMarcus Lawrence, but obviously numbers reflect positively on
but
him,
if
especially
you're
in
gonna
recent history.
say who's gonna
But
have the most, which two defensive ends are gonna have the most sacks in
I'm not saying that.
2024?
Who's the best? Who's going to be the best for their team?
Well,
And I think there's a chance that the Giants they're at least more firmly in the conversation, which is why. And for a second and a fifth, you know what I mean? Like this, and especially if we believe that they're
mhm,
going to have a rookie quarterback contract to kind of work with in the near future,
yep.
and they'll be done with Daniel Jones in 2025. This was a net win for them. I did want to say I do think the legend of how bad the trade is for the Panthers has inflated Brian Burns just a little bit, right? Because like every time we talk about it, we're like, oh man, how embarrassing. And so like that makes Burns seem just a little bit more awesome. He's an
Yep.
incredible pass rusher. But also you love to look at things to this slant. Not that the numbers are really close, but the contract that they gave him has to impact the contract discussions that the Cowboys have with Micah Parsons. So you beat your division rival, you
Mhm.
raise the price all the more. I mean, they've had a great free agency start, and they haven't done anything stupid at the quarterback position. They're seemingly biding their time there.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's going to be Jaden Daniels, and we'll see how the state of the NFL factors into that, whether Minnesota gets involved now without Kirk Cousins, but Atlanta's not a player for Kirk, obviously, or now that they have Kirk, excuse me. So, I mean, kudos to the Giants. I think that they've handled their business rather well. You were
Yeah.
oh, there you go. You're back. You were breaking up for a second, but you're back.
All right. I have nothing to add
Okay.
more on the Giants.
I hear your I know that this is an awkward part of the episode because your voice and your audio weren't lined up, so I didn't know when you were talking and when you were done. You're fine. Don't touch anything. You're good. Let's move on. Hang on, let me put it back on the screen. Oh no. The Washington Commanders, BLG. I remain firm in the conviction that Dan Quinn does not have any unique ideas because he didn't have any when it came to assembling his staff, and then he apparently doesn't have any when it comes to acquiring any players. So this has Marcus Mariota at the top, which did happen on Tuesday. So an NFC East player. Austin Eckler was the running back that they wound up with. Antonio Gibson did leave in free agency for the New England Patriots. Zach Ertz, just also obsessed with the division. Nick Allegretti. They bolstered up their offensive line in addition to obviously signing Tyler Biadasz, who we mentioned, Dorrance Armstrong we talked about. They did bring in Brandon McManus. Jason McCourty broke that news, so the NFL media types loved that. And they brought in Frankie Louvu. I was really upset about that. That was a name that we had circled as a potential option for the Cowboys. And it was kind of like, what the hell, Dan? Now you value linebackers? Like, you mean you don't want to play an undrafted safety at the linebacker position? Wow. So I don't feel it's too early in the era and the regime to say like this was a home run. This was great the way we feel about the Giants. I do think this was a positive first step, though.
They have the most cap space in the NFL to spend, so
Right. So
naturally,
these overpays are not a big deal in that sense.
yeah. I mean, yeah, it's not the biggest deal. It's what you see happen. This is exactly what you see happen when the team is in the situation that the Commanders are. Obviously, it's a little bit unique with the new ownership and everything, but in terms like total reset, new GM, new coach, they want to bring in their own guys. They aren't really too attached to whoever else they had. Commanders, in addition to having a lot of cap space, had a lot of free agents. So they have a lot of spots on the roster and depth chart as a whole to fill out. So they're signing a bunch of guys to help kind of fill some of those holes. No one is especially like, oh my gosh, like, can you believe they got that guy? I do think the Frankie Louvu signing could be a nice one for them. That might be a nice ascending player who is on a good deal for a bit, but no one that's like, oh my gosh, amazing superstar, puts them over the top kind of move. But that's not what they're at in their phase. They're just in kind of the setting. They're building their foundation. This is the foundation they're trying to build here. So I think what they did isn't especially threatening, but it's fine.
Their entire offseason isn't going to be graded upon this. It's going to be graded upon what happens with the second overall pick. I think that's been obvious from the jump. I did see some Commanders fans. I don't want to label the whole fan base as feeling this way. So they signed Dorrance Armstrong first. That was the first Cowboy to follow, and then Tyler Biadasz. And I saw some fans that were responding to the Washington Reporter saying like, "Oh, this is lame. Like, don't just bring all the Cowboys over here." Like, it does look a little silly is not the right word. Weird's not the right word. But am I off here? Am I just biased, or do you kind of feel a similar sort of way as a third party?
I mean, it's just kind of, I think in a vacuum, what you're saying makes sense in terms of it's not like the most inspiring thing you could do, but the reality is that teams just do this. This is what happens in the NFL. Everyone brings their own guys everywhere, whether that's coaching staff or play. It's what happens. So part of it is, I think, fine because it does happen so much, but part of it is also a little bit uninspired because it happens so much, and maybe you could be a little bit more creative, but I think it's fine.
By the way, as you say that, behind you on the TV in my office is Zach Ertz with a Washington Commanders microphone in front of him.
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy for Zach Ertz in terms of the money. I don't think like this. This to me is clearly like he's signing that deal because this is the most money he can get, and it makes sense for the Commanders in terms of you have a veteran kind of presence for a young quarterback, and he has experience with Cliff Kingsbury, his experience with Brian Johnson as well. So someone who kind of knows the offensive system they're going to be putting in. Yeah, I mean, it's unfortunate and weird that Zach Ertz. It's not like killing me because I don't think Zach Ertz has like a ton more to offer as a player, but I think it makes sense for him, and I'm glad he got one. I think this is probably going to be his last payday. He got one last payday.
I was thinking about Washington tight ends, like when I saw this like become official, and like thinking about the best Washington tight end in our lives. Is the answer Chris Cooley? Yeah. And then I thought about, and maybe the younger listeners or viewers don't remember this. Do you remember that commercial? I don't recall what it was. It might have been like a fantasy commercial. And
I will say Jordan Reed at his peak was pretty good.
He was.
Before, yeah.
But Chris Cooley was amazing. So anyway, you rudely interrupted. The commercial was like players doing these crazy things and catching passes. And Chris Cooley was at like a house under construction. And he like punched his hands through the drywall or through the I don't think it was drywall, but through the wall and caught a pass. Do you remember this?
Kind of vaguely.
Yeah, and the other one I remember was not Chris Cooley, Lawrence Maroney. Remember him from the New England Patriots? In the same like brand or whatever of commercials, he dove through an SUV through the windows, the driver's window and the passenger windows. How cool is that? I want to YouTube this, but like that's impossible. Okay. And he did it. So anyway, I went down a little bit of a rabbit hole.
Super niche.
Is it niche or niche?
I've heard it both ways. Shout out to Psych.
Anything?
You ever watch that show?
No, but my brother-in-law loves it. Is it the show with they have a musical episode, right?
I guess. I haven't watched it. It's been a long time since I've watched it, but good show.
Do we want to get out of here? Do we have anything else to offer? I mean, what do you want to
do? It's crazy that there's so much to react to. We're only at the 50-minute mark. It feels like we messed up somewhere along the way. We had to do songs, obviously.
Right. And by the way, Rachel's not producing this episode, so shout out once again, as always, to Michael Kist. We do have a song from him. Do you want to do that now?
Shout out to Kist, who was willing to house me when I was like, I might need a place to stay tonight on Sunday night in Tampa, and he very graciously offered. It ended up not working out where it would make the most sense for me, but I just want to give our good friend Michael Kist, who's also stepped in here, and obviously he stepped down upon his mighty throne to mix with us,
to hang out, hang out with the mortals for a little bit. So yeah. Well, do you want his song or do you want to add anything else? Like, what do you want to do?
That's it. I guess you want to know anything about my time in Florida?
Not really.
Okay, I won't talk about it then.
Did you have fun?
I had fun. A lot of fun. We were in Clearwater, which is where the Phillies have their spring training. Went to a Phillies spring training game, and they lost.
They do the last time they were in the World Series?
They lost again. They also lost that. But it was a fun time. It was really. I know, like this makes sense.
Oh, I saw the photo that you were like somebody tweeted at you and you shared this,
Oh
right?
yeah,
Yeah.
yes, yeah. Retweeted that. It was weird to me, and I know this makes sense because the Phillies have their spring training there, and I know there's a lot of transplants in Florida. They have Wawas down there, but it was just weird when we would like go out somewhere, like a restaurant or bar or whatever, and just how many Philly people there were. Like it was a little like it was just so bizarre because you're in this entirely different place in the world, and there's this big ecosystem of the people that you're familiar with. And it was really weird to me. Cool, but very strange.
While we're on the subject of the Phillies, more specifically the losers of the 2022 World Series to the Houston Astros, I saw that they're doing away with dollar dog night. Is that
devastating,
dude? What the hell?
I did 10 hot dogs back in 2022, I think September, for
We had a
$10.
listener once upon a time do this and update us, remember? And they sent the videos.
Kind of.
And they had to
Oh,
they had to
actually,
change
yes.
to the brats. Yeah.
Yeah.
But
now,
as I understand, there's like unruly behavior or something that's associated with this.
that's the purported reasoning. But like, are you kidding? And other people have made this point. If you rate, so now instead of dollar dog nights, it's 2 for $5. So it would
What a
cost me
ripoff.
$25 to get 10 this time, which I'm not going to do. But how is raising the dog by $1.50 essentially going to stop people from throwing it? They're still going to throw it. Like that's not going to deter anything.
What I was once told that the bank was like the toughest place in baseball. In my experience,
it is.
It's relative to my team, it's nothing but it's soft. That's all it is. It's soft.
Statistically,
it surrendered a no-hitter to the opposing team in the Houston Astros, and now they're getting rid of dollar dogs. So yeah, I'm glad we were able to touch on this. So thanks for bringing up your time in Florida, for opening the door.
Also, I went to the Flyers game and saw them get shut out 7-0. It was so bad. They were down 4-0 in the first 10 minutes.
We have free agency news as it relates to Dallas.
Wow.
You ready for this?
I'm
free
looking
agency
at Twitter
news
right now.
As it relates to Dallas. Free agent running back DJ Dallas is signing with the Arizona Cardinals.
He should sign with the Cowboys. What are you doing?
Yeah, he should. It's like that scene in Forrest Gump. You know what I'm talking about, where he's like, "Oh, that was Cleveland. He was from Dallas, and that was you know what I'm talking about." And he's like, "That was Tex, and he was from California or whatever." He's like, it's just a funny little scene.
Would you get a Dallas jersey?
No, but I guarantee you they would sell them.
They should. I would, if there's a player on the Eagles name, like last name Philadelphia. Yeah, I think I'm getting that jersey.
What if it's a dumb number?
Actually get it because I don't.
What if it's like number like?
I don't own any jerseys.
Like I don't know, like
as a jersey though, I would get it as a jersey.
Oh, also Fletcher Cox retired since
I talked about that. Yeah. What are your thoughts on him as a from a rival perspective? Jason Witten famously once called him a man dog, which I don't know what that means, but he called him that.
He's always been a problem. I'm not bummed that Fletcher Cox and Jason Kelce are gone. I wish them health, wealth, and happiness and wonderful times with their families and friends and, late nights and smiles and laughs so hard that their bellies ache. But thank God that they're not playing for the Eagles anymore.
Yeah. 2 big losses. Fletch was, I think, I don't even know if it's arguable. He was the best player on the Super Bowl Eagles team. Like he wasn't like the best player necessarily in the Super Bowl itself, but the totality of that season, I think you could say Fletcher Cox was the best player on that team. So it's obviously counts for something. And I think there is something to be said for how both Kelce and Cox went out on top. Like they both played really well last year.
I don't know that Cox went out on top. You've been kind of bagging on him for a while. I mean, he maybe
no.
held on a little bit. Well, he returned to form, but there was a little while where people were down on him.
For sure. He had a little bit of a lull there, but last year, he still could have played this year. I very much believe that. And same thing with Kelce. So that's kind of nice to see, I guess, as opposed to, seeing your favorite players kind of just like really deteriorate and just, be a shell of themselves. Like that's probably more of a bummer. So yeah, shout out to them. And definitely a big loss in the locker room on the team as a whole. And at least we have Brandon Graham back. About that one.
Last question, and then we'll do songs. So you brought up Jason Witten. There are a handful of Eagles that I remember growing up and getting into this line of work, and as I'm sure there are certain Cowboys that you remember that were just like, like whatever. Who are those players for younger fans right now? Like if a fan like high school age.
Wait,
I mean,
sorry. What is this?
like I'm sure there were Cowboys players. Like you also brought up Michael Strahan. Like there were players that when we were growing up that we were just like, it sucks so much that guy's on, the division rival or whatever. Jason
Ware for sure.
Ware's up there. No, I'm saying like who are those players now for like kids who are like in high school, like middle school, high school, these formative years.
AJ Brown.
Yeah. Devontae, I would put up there. Maybe Saquon.
Trying to think of a Giant. Yeah, I was trying to. I would say he was that. Certainly for the Giants.
Brian Burns. Kayvon has the chance because Kayvon's also like a really loud and infectious personality. So he'll be in a lot of things. You know what I mean? The way like a lot of the players were mentioning. And maybe
it's hard to think of a Giant. Although Xavier maybe it's Darren Waller who's going to retire. No, Xavier McKinney, by the way, almost an Eagle. Packers ultimately ended up outbidding them, but
also last thing. Good. I'm glad we went this like hodgepodge of collection of things that we remembered off the top of our heads. With Marcus Mariota now in tow in Washington, is Sam Howell a trade candidate? Do we think so?
What did I say? I think it was last week. I was like, that makes all the sense in the world to trade him because I just don't. He doesn't fit like their timeline anymore. You're clearly moving on to a younger quarterback, and I don't know who's doing this at this point, but I feel like you have to, given Sam Howell's low salary and given that he has starting experience, I feel like there has to be a team out there that would be willing to give up at least like a fourth for him, which is better than what the Commanders drafted him at in the 5th round. So I feel like there has to be a way where you can get like a pick above what you drafted him at, and I would just do that at that point.
So I totally listened to everything you said, but we agree that it is kind of cool in sports when players have a bit of a heel turn. Like I wouldn't say DeMarco.
Like who?
Well, like Saquon, maybe, right? Like certainly, at least in Tiki's eyes. But like they go from one division rival to another. Just now, as we're closing, Patrick Queen signing with the Pittsburgh Steelers. That's cool. Like that's like a heated rivalry. Like that's really cool. I love that.
It's a Steelers move for sure.
I know that.
Well, wait a minute.
I know that Cincinnati is the Queen City, but now that we're in the AFC North, I think I know he was already in the AFC North, but we got the real Queen City here in the Berg, baby, the Berg and that black and gold. I need to hit up Lil Wayne, see if he can do a new version of the song. Yeah, I'm here, baby. I'm here.
I was saving this for my song choice because it's only fitting, so I'll just jump right into it. I'm gonna go by the song that I don't know if people know this as much. I think you should know it because you went to the Steelers stadium and they played this song. I'm guessing it's the song they used to like pump up the crowd, I think late in the game. It's kind of a funny song for me as a pump up song. The intro is epic, which is like that part's really good. But then the rest of the song kind of gets like strangely upbeat and silly kind of. Anyway, it is Renegade by Styx. And this is for, listen to this. I've been thinking about this and I've been needing to say this to you ever since it happened. First of all, I did message you this, as you know, but for the people behind, who didn't know that, which is everyone, Russell Wilson's such a Steeler. Like this is why I was like, they're not going to trade for Justin Fields or sign Kirk Cousins. Those are not Steelers. Russell Wilson is a Steeler. That is such a Steeler. And also, RJ, I think Russell Wilson is like technically an Eagle now, because did you know the Steelers and the Eagles were once one team? So he's kind of almost an Eagle now, which I've always wanted to happen. So
you're totally right that he, like, the Steelers are such a, there's a negative connotation here, but I mean this in a very respectful way. They're such a branded organization, right? Like you could totally say like, oh yeah, when I sit down with the Rooney family, one of the NFL's great and historic families, up there. I mean, the Allen family obviously played for, and I didn't get to interact with the Bolden family and these Walmart guys. I mean, you know how they came in and they mess everything up. Nothing goes on clearance in the NFL. But here in the Berg, it's about culture and it's about family and our team, we used to be a family with the other one here in the Keystone States. That right? I've been learning all this stuff, and we used to be one family, and I'm kind of used to being a bird in green, but not that kind of bird in green. And so they're right down the road. I think after this I'm going to Permanis, and
he's gonna sign a sandwich.
It's
gonna conflict with his Subway sponsorship.
Those fries. I mean, I
so bad.
I gotta be careful what I put in here. My body's a temple, and yeah. So Patrick Queen, baby, let's go.
What's the Steelers thing? What's the phrase now?
It's here we go. That's like their.
Oh, that's terrible. And it's also conflicts with Dak. Right?
I know. Yep. I only knew that prominently because of that.
That's so terrible. Like, I mean, it's not a terrible towel, but it's terrible because that could be for anything. Who cares? Like, that could be literally any team.
I had to wipe something, and I almost grabbed one of them, and I was like, "Oh no, I'm not trying to be disrespectful. I want y'all waving them. When we're in the battles, I want to see those towels waving." So.
He's such a Steeler. Again, it's just of course you think they're going to sign the guy who's won a Super Bowl, regardless of how bad he's been recently, or the guy who's won 10 games in 3 years. I think they're going to sign the guy who won the Super Bowl. And also, I'm rooting for it. The Steelers officially will be my second favorite team now with Russ there this year. If the Eagles do not win the Super Bowl, I want the Steelers to win the Super Bowl.
See,
and if Russ wins the Super Bowl with the Steelers, which he will not, certainly, but if he does, I just might have to buy a Steelers jersey. His jersey.
Sounds based on this episode, you really want a jersey. I think you're trying to scratch an itch.
I don't want a jersey.
My team like that is also in state, the Houston Texans. I love the free agency period that they're having. And I've obviously been in on them for a long time. I was the only person at SB Nation to correctly predict them to win the AFC South. So shout out to me. Speaking of what we say on SB Nation, I told Steven this last week on the Look Ahead on TGI Football, RIP Look Ahead. But I saw a tweet from Chris Brockman, who's the producer for the Rich Eisen Show. And he said it would be the funniest thing of all time if Mike Tomlin's 500 thing died with Russell Wilson. Like, that would just be incredible content. If they fell short with Russell Wilson at quarterback, I think
quarterback who didn't have a losing record in a season ever prior to the last couple of years in Denver. I do think Russ will bounce back a little bit just because the Broncos. I think the Broncos are a lot to like. You've been on this for years. You were ripping them a long time ago. Like, they've been outside of Peyton Manning. They've been like just an unserious, disastrous organization for a long time. I think part of the fault there is more them than just him. Obviously, he was part of the problem, but I don't think he was the only problem.
They're a front-running franchise. Like, they don't want to do any work. They just want to sign free. They're an elevated version of the Arizona Cardinals, because that's who the Cardinals are. They just sign all these cast-offs, these dudes who want to go, get ready for retirement in the wonderful area that is Glendale, Phoenix, et cetera, et cetera. And the Broncos are, similar sort of environment to live in. Like, people love living in Denver. So they're a front-running franchise. They just signed free agents. Who's the best draft pick they've had in the last 20 years? Von Miller? Oh, wow, that was really hard.
Patrick Surtain's pretty good.
Okay, but then, that just broke their way, though. And he's not in Von Miller's territory. You know what I'm saying? So if they hadn't gotten Peyton Manning in free agency in 2012, we would be talking about this franchise as a complete and total joke for the entire quarter century. So
yeah, there's a larger point there that like the margin between success and failure in the NFL is, I think, sometimes a lot slimmer than people give it credit for. I always bring up the example of the Eagles, like, they wanted Ben McAdoo instead of Doug Pearson. And even last year, or the 2022 offseason, instead of trading for A.J. Brown, they tried to trade for, Allen Robinson. Like, there's always there's moves that are not too far away from being made that are, like, almost disasters. Okay, do you have another thing? Or
this is NFC East news. Give me like a breaking news sound effect.
I already saw it.
We'll still do it. The New York Giants are signing Drew Lock,
who beat the Eagles last year.
Watch out, Daniel Jones. You're in trouble. Okay. Kiss song, by the way, is 36-inch chain by Run the Jewels.
Nice.
My song isn't as cool. But
if your middle name, wait, never mind. Sorry.
I don't have a middle name. I've been over this many
Roel the Junior, RTJ.
That's true. So, oh my gosh, Russell Wilson just tweeted in all caps with like 4 E's, Queen, and then tagged Patrick Queen. Dude, he is so back. Like he has, back, he has like room to flex again. Like he's been suppressed for a long time. Good for him.
I'm pretty sure the Broncos and Steelers play in this season too. So I can't wait for that.
Yeah. Well, remember we were like, I can't wait for this Broncos Jets game, and then that sucked. So I mean, be careful what you wish.
Yeah, it's also possible Kenny Pickett will be playing. Whoever.
My song is all about it's a song that makes me happy no matter what. That's where I'm at. The Cowboys have upset me greatly, if that isn't obvious. It's an all-time song. It's over a decade old now. I can't believe that. Sugar by Maroon 5. It goes hard.
How does that go?
I'm not going to sing it. I don't want to get us violated, like some sort of rights issue. So
True.
It's a good song. Let's leave. As we do, oh, hang on. We have another one. Dion Bush is returning to the Chiefs. Okay, whatever. As we leave, can you, in your best, you offer a Russ impersonation of the tweet queen, but with like 4 E's. So
I'm not doing that. You already did that. That's not exciting. No, okay. I'm shutting it.
How about
down?
How about this? As we go, tell us another food that there should be dollar nights for, in addition to hot dogs.
That's a really good one, actually. I was going to say something that's too close to hot dogs, corn dogs. What do you think? Do you have anything in mind? It's hardly a single item. Has to be like a single item of
not
sorts.
A dollar.
Right? It can't be
it
can't be like fries. Like that's there's too many items.
I'm gonna cheat a little bit. Not a dollar. $5 personal pan pizzas.
No, it has to be $1. Has to be $1. $1. You're replacing Dollar Dog Night, the Phillies. You're like
ice cream cones, but like legit ones, not the little flimsy ones.
You could do a mini ice cream cone. That would work, but I don't know. I'm so tired.
Let's go with
I was gonna think pickle on a stick.
No. How about
too polarizing?
How about pretzels? Soft pretzels.
Hey, how about you, the listeners who listen to this show, tweet at us. That's right. Tweet at us at RJ Ochoa and at Brandon Gowton and at BGN_radio with the hashtag dollar suggestions.
Mixtape dollar suggestions.
That's way too long.